hard for us that we want. You know, we're only able to have Butte Creek and a bit of base camp, for example. We don't have Camp Clark open, and that's because there's just not enough Cubs going. And it shows up in other places. It shows up in the number of volunteers we have, all sorts of things. Scouting is better with friends, is what it comes down to. And there are many units that don't have quite enough scouts to be stable. Where, you know, you can't quite deliver the program you want because there's only 2 Tigers and there's nobody else for them to play with or whatever. This isn't true of all units, and I have admiration for that, but it is true for a lot of units. And so it's something that we're really doubling down on. One of the first myths to burst is people who've been involved in Cub Scouting for a long time. A lot of units had a push for recruitment in the fall to start the program year, and that was their plan. They got enough, and that is not generally the way it works anymore. And so that's going to be a theme throughout tonight's talk. Does it work? That's strange. I tested it. Oh well, if you can advance the next one. So who am I? I'm the membership chair of Pacific Trail, in as much as I can be. This is my contact information. Happy to help advise as needed. How did I get saddled with this responsibility? I had the misfortune of being committee chair of a pack during COVID that grew during COVID instead of shrink. And so I got saddled with this job. Next slide, please.
Oh, can we,
Yeah,
are we gonna send this deck out to the people in attendance too? I think it will help.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be
when Mike Volz posts this video, he'll include the slideshow.
Okay.
Yep. A very classic way of thinking about marketing and sales, and it feels a little creepy, but that's exactly what we're doing here, is called the leads funnel. And it goes from somebody who doesn't know anything about your product. And don't be confused. Most parents don't know what scouting is, don't know it still exists. And the closest idea they might have is having watched the movie Up a decade ago. All right, that is probably about the most that families that exist know of. All right. So there's a process called attraction. How do you get them into even being aware of and giving you their eyeballs or their ears for even a millisecond to start getting an idea of what we're trying to talk about? Then we need to convert them into people that are seriously considering scouting. Then we need to close the deal. All right, which is when I know it happens because an application goes across the screen. And then you need to delight. There's their first critical month or two where they need to land, know what they're doing, feel confident, feel engaged, feel heard, or they disappear. And so we have this whole funnel. And a common thing is to get, especially when stressed by not having enough scouts in your unit, is to focus on one aspect of this. If you're feeling stressed for not having enough people, it's kind of unlikely you are going to be able to role model perfection in every single area. But if you forget any one of these areas at all, if you do a bad job at any part of this, all your leads fall away and you get nothing. Next slide. So let's talk about attraction. There's many ways of doing this, and some of them are a lot more creative than what I have up here. Basic ones are, you really should have your pin on Be a Scout accurate and compelling. You get a paragraph to describe what makes your unit interesting and basic facts like when and where you meet and things like that. Make it interesting. What is special about it? Does your pack go camping twice a year? Does your pack do Pinewood Derby? You know, fit things in that are going to make people excited. Often forgotten about is just by nature of your pack, you're out and about in the community. You know, you're out hiking at a park. You are using a park to do rank up. You are going to a sports game. You're going to see a fish hatchery, all sorts of things. Wear your uniform as adults. Be approachable. Smile at strangers. If they seem amenable, have conversations. Or notice that they have a kid. And this also goes when you're not with your unit. Just, you're sitting in church and you notice that there's some families that you talk to every week that their kids would benefit from scouting. Or you're sitting at a basketball game, one of your kids' basketball games. Just keep an eye out. A special point of interest tonight is going to be talking about events. So this is a school in your area has a back to school night or a spring carnival or something like that. Or your town has a farmer's market that's particularly appropriate for your demographics. Those are wonderful places to attract attention, and you do it by having a booth, having a nice table, having props. I like to hang some paddles and a little mini tent I have, things like that. Just a little, they don't sell scouting, but they get someone, why should their eyes stop? Why do they stop at the table just long enough for you to be able to shake their hand and sort of hold them in place while you talk to them? Social media, of course. And of course, one of the best ways, but also the hardest, is invite a friend. Scouts are scared of doing it. So one of the ways I like to have, it's a great strategy where it works and with your most outgoing scouts, but I also like to, and I should have put in parentheses, invite a friend's kid. All right. We all know lots of families and we can just be like, hey, I think this would be really great for you. Next slide, please. While you're doing this first initial attraction, so this is sort of towards the end of attraction where you're actually focusing or you're designing your booth, you're figuring out what to put on a poster board, something like that. For kids, you focus on the fun, all right? And for most kids, the hook we have that's different than other people is camping, hiking, horses, archery, BB guns, playing games, things like that. That's great for the kids. What the adults want to hear and what makes them go, oh, and actually look at the pamphlet you hand them is the law and the oath, confidence, life skills, family scouting. For confidence, one of the ways I'm going to have to retool this because I think I'm pretty sure this Tiger adventure didn't survive the redesign, but the magic adventure that Tigers did. And I use this as a very fast way of explaining the scouting program to parents. I tell them, the first graders have this adventure where they learn about magic, and the kids think they are learning magic tricks, and they do. But what I tell the parents is what they're really learning to do is to get up in front of 50 scouts and all their parents and all their siblings and talk in a loud voice. And like half of the parents say, that would be hard for me as a grown-up to do. That is really impressive that these 6-year-olds are going to be doing that. All right, we're now going to switch to some best practices if you're actually doing a tabling event at a school or a fairs.
Hi. If y'all not seen me yet, I'm Jesse. I'm your district executive. Back before I moved to Oregon, I lived in Texas and I was a director of operations for a farmer's market. So I just wanted to give some best practices based on from a host's perspective. Our market followed a model that a lot of markets around the country follow, and that is having a dedicated booth to have a nonprofit or have a general community interest booth with a they'll build out a schedule with a rotating list of nonprofits, and every once in a while there'll be a vacancy, and they'll be looking for someone to fill that spot and table at their event. Try and get onto that list. That being said, if you approach a farmer's market or a holiday market and you just right out the gate say, we're looking to just grow our numbers, we're looking to just recruit, if it looks like you're there for sales, you're most likely going to get looked over. If you come at them and focus on the community aspect, and what you do for the community, what service projects you're doing, what current Eagle projects are going on, that is going to give you such a big leg up. And then also see what you can do to help them out as well. Could you make a community service project, surrounding them? Could you go on litter patrol during their event? And aim to be invited back. To give an example, I had a nonprofit, come table. It was supposed to only be one time that they came out, and they focused on, making the roads more bikeable, in the city. And at the same time, we were in need of some road barriers. They fell into disrepair and they were really expensive to replace. They stepped up and said, hey, with our connections to the Department of Transportation, we can actually help get those for you. And because of that, I actually, we had like a year-long agreement where they came out once a month. And that's just one of the key things. What was supposed to be one time ended up being a year of free tabling for them. Next slide, please. A very important thing when you do table at these events, more often than not, they're gonna ask you for a COI for that event. If you need to get a COI, go to our safety and insurance page on our website. If you can't find it right away, there's like a search option at the top of the page. Just type insurance or safety and it'll pop up. And towards the bottom of the page, oh, you can barely see it. It says request a certificate of insurance, and it'll prompt you to fill out a form to get that. When you do fill that out, make sure everything is absolutely correct, including the address. If you do not have the right address, the COI is completely null and void, and it's just a waste of a piece of paper. I've actually had to ask vendors to leave the market because their COI had the wrong address on it. It used to have a different market location. And it's just very devastating after they spent all that labor, all that time, all that gas getting out there, just to have it all be to waste.
So the COI, the address should be the address of the event.
Yes. I'll get into following the rule book. Yes, thank you for pulling that up. Yeah, because there, or you can also call our council office. And they'll help you out as well. You just fill it out for a unit. Activities where you'll fill out what you're exactly going to be doing there, and then location right there to help fill that out. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And then COIs can take up to 2 weeks to process. So as soon as you get a confirmation that you're going to be at that event, make a getting a COI the first thing you do. If you have a market, if you're going to a market on a Saturday and you're trying to get that COI on the Friday, that is just not going to happen. Next slide, please.
Yep.
Sorry. Of course, always follow all the rules and regulations. Their rule book is born and bred out of just years of experience of that market existing. Never ever think you're going to be an exception to a rule. And then also the people that run these markets are incredibly busy people. One of the things that really held me up as a director was getting flooded with emails asking questions that could easily be answered through the handbook or the rule book. Help them help you, read it, make it your first point of reference if you have any questions. If you just can't find it, that's when you reach out to them. Also, there's load in, load out procedures. Following these is needed because if you don't, you can become a liability risk. Another example was I had someone just completely not read the materials I had provided for them. They decided to drive around some barricades to try to get to their booth and set up, and drove into a completely crowded area. And it caused a lot of panic and chaos for us. Thankfully, nothing happened, but there was such a high risk, and I had to just say, I'm not even going to let you continue, like leave immediately. And they were never allowed to operate at our market again. And then some markets have some requirements in regards to the flyers you use. My market, we had a grant that we had to follow some strict low waste, low litter rules. And one of those things was not allowing paper flyers because that was just a high risk of litter everywhere. As much as we love to think that everyone takes their flyer and takes it home and reads it thoroughly, there's going to be a large percentage that just ends up on the floor in the trash. A way we got around that, or how we suggested people get around that, was to utilize QR codes on your tables for people to scan. Or you can make a blow up of your flyer, and just make it like a thick poster board for people to take pictures of with their phone instead. Next one. This should be my last one. A lot of these markets will require a pop-up tent of some sort, or they'll regulate a booth space to be 10 by 10, which they'll enforce by seeing a tent. If they see you with a tent, then they know you're good to go. You're not violating any space rules. If we do have some branded ones like the picture up there, if you ever want, if you are in need of a pop-up tent, please contact me and I'll help you out. And then something I wanted to focus on was safety around these tents. These seemingly unassuming tents have huge risks associated with them as well. There are lawsuits out there that have paid out in the millions just because one of these tents picked up within a gust of wind, hit someone, caused extensive bodily damage, extensive property damage. So some best practices when it comes to these tents is try and put it up with at least 2 people if possible. When you are assembling it, always have at least one hand on the tent. That's why I tell people to have 2 people. Then you know for sure you're going to have at least one hand on it. Whenever you do extend it, put weights on the feet before you raise it up at full height. And then those weights, best practice is usually about 10 to 15 pounds per leg. And then only then after it's secured and weighed down properly, that's when you can walk away from it. Never just put a tent up and then walk away and think it's good. As soon as you walk away, it's going to be 50 feet in the air. That's it. Do you have any questions on that before? I know I kind of flew through that.
A couple of points on those from my personal experience. You want to think about the audience that's walking by, and especially if you're doing this as a single unit. So if you're a unit in Banks and it's a Banks farmers market, then that's a great place for you. If you're a unit in Beaverton and you decide to go to the Beaverton market, you'll have success, but you're also going to have about 90%, 99% of the people that walk by won't be from your part of town or whatever. If you're doing a big event that has a wide swath of the district, I encourage you to reach out to me, see if we can coordinate other units to do it together. Makes it easier and also makes more likely that the people going by. I also request as membership chair that if you're doing an event like that, as opposed to like say the school that your pack meets at or something like that, that you have a plan for people that are interested, that you've attracted to the concept of Scouts, but are a different part of town, are always doing church the night your pack meets or some other thing. You know, let's get them into scouting somewhere. So, and then also, if you do go down the route of setting up at your school or another event, I have some pictures of some booths that have been all decked out with stuff to attract people for ideas on how to do that.
We did a farmer's market a few years ago, and we had, like patches inside things of leaves. So one of the things we set up is having scouts kind of off to the side, playing games, inviting the kids of those parents to come play those games with them. Well, then we had a chance to talk to the parents about scouting, right?
We have a really terrible time dirty track.
Yeah,
We set up part of, and then we have a whole bunch of Lego cars that fit on the.
we stole that idea.
And let me tell you, you get like a lot of time at that point, because the parents have to drag their kids away. They're just like, hi, how's it going? Yeah, we're just.
They're stuck talking to you.
Oh,
Their
it's
kid
so
is
good.
doing, 10, 15 minutes of building cars. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fair amount of work, but boy, does it keep them there.
I'm 3D printing new connectors for that thing, by the way, so it'll be easier to put up. Anyway.
All right, so you've attracted someone to pay attention. So, now they know more about Scout. They know that Scouts exist. All right, they've done more than watch the movie of. So they're talking to you at a table, at an event, or something like that. where do we go from here? You need to convert them to being interested about scouting. So this is what you do with them afterwards. And you should, if you have an event, you should have a plan. You know, the traditional answer, and Mike Foltz has some great videos where he talks about how to run a join night. This is a planned event that you're funneling new recruits to. It's a great thing to do in the fall as you're starting up the program year. It can be difficult to do it multiple times per year. I don't want to go into join nights now, but usually you have various activity stations for the visiting youth while you talk to the adults over on the side. It's a great system if you have attracted enough people at the same time, but you may not. You know, you might get 5 or 6 people, you know, you may go to an event in the middle of the year, get 5 or 6 people, and it might be you might not be able to run a traditional join night. So what do? With all these things, the most critical thing I've found is you have to talk to them within 36 hours. You need to call them, you need to text them. You can email them stuff. Most people won't read their email. You got to call them. You got to text them and say, hey, I hope you got my email. I would love to talk to you on the phone. You got to do that. And if you do that within 36 hours, most of the people will talk to you. If you sort of forget about, if you let them chase you, most of them disappear. And I really recommend, if you can't do something like a join night, that you really have a phone call with them. This can feel like a big ask, because you should expect 30, 40 minutes, because these people don't know anything about scouting. They have some preconceived notions. They know what they heard at the table or whatever attracted them. But here's the deal. My experience is if you have that conversation with them, well over 50% of the people you talk to become active, engaged scouts for years. And that's a high payback right there. You know, I'm willing to have a 30-minute conversation to get a kid into scouts. You know, if all I had to do was just have that 30-minute conversation over and over, I just crank it through. So that, you know, the thing is, every family has completely different concerns. So often what I do in that phone call is I'd like, would you like me to do my 90-second spiel on what Cub Scouting is? And that's where I quickly run over the fact that, you know, there's a pack and there's different dens, and the dens are small and work on adventures, and the pack is about big activities and recognition, and that we do it all in support of the oath and the law while the kids are having fun. And you get good at giving that little pat thing in 2 or 3 minutes. And then you find out what that family's unique concerns are. It might be that they really want their kid to be outdoorsy. It might be that they want their kid to have more socialization. It might be that they're really concerned about the religious aspect of the reverence aspect of scouting. It could be any number of things. So that's what I embed. And then this is what you do. Invite them to a meeting. So if you don't have a big fancy join night, invite them to a meeting. Don't ask them to come to crossover. That won't work. Get them to a den meeting if it makes sense, a pack meeting if it makes sense, whatever makes sense. If you happen to be talking to them the week before you do rain gutter regatta, get them to that. Use your imagination about what it makes sense to come to, but get them to come to a meeting, because that's how they see scouting. That's where the kids meet other kids and say, I want to come play with that kid. And that's where the adults see other adults excited that their kids are doing this. Next slide, please. When you're having that conversation, be ready. They're going to ask how much it costs. They're going to ask how much uniforms cost once they know there's uniforms. They're going to ask how money works. And you need to be upfront about it. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Start with something like, it's our mission, it is our goal that money is never a barrier. So we'll talk about it, but then be realistic about what it costs. It's not scary, all right? Either, my experience is families either need financial help, or it's so much cheaper than everything else they're doing. It just doesn't matter when they hear the numbers. Like, they're worried about it, and then they hear the numbers and they just sort of roll their eye and be like, whatever. Most families are sort of in one of those two camps. Know when your packs and when your pack meetings are, know when each of your dens meet. Know what's coming on, so you can be like, hey, you should come hiking with us, or even just to be able to say, next month we're going hiking, and then in April we're going camping, and then in May we're going to a Timbers game, whatever you're doing, just sort of be ready with that. And know something about the dens, all right? So you can say things, I just made up a scenario here, but if you're talking to a parent of a second grade boy, know that, hey, and they've been talking about how they're a little worried about their kids' ADHD, and that's their kid's a little something. You can you might be able to say, the den leader already has some kids like that. We know what we're doing. You can, that may or may not be the answer, but know what's going on so that you can talk about that. Be specific and concrete about leaders, like use the den leaders' names. That makes it sound much more approachable. Your kid should come and have a great time with den leader Sam or whatever. It makes it sound like a real person. And in the same way, you can talk about, that's what I'm just saying, you talk about, it'll be so lovely when your kid joins the pack. They'll be part of Sam's den. They'll be jumping in there with these other kids, and they're excited to have some more kids because maybe there's only 3 of them currently, and your kid's gonna make it awesome. They're gonna be so excited. When they show up, now you're trying to convert them to actually file their application and pay the cash. All right. So basic things. Make sure someone is gonna have their eyes out for them, so they don't wander in going, I don't know what I'm doing. Greet them, walk up to them, say, I'm so glad that you're here. Show them where to sit. I suggest, unless the youth is very clingy and very scared, I suggest having asking if the kid, bringing the kid over to the den and having them sit with the other kids, like, I'd like to introduce you to the other second graders. It also lets you chat with the parents once you separate. Some kids, especially some kindergartners, they're gonna want to hang with mom and dad, and that's fine. They can go sit with the den as well. Then, yeah,
The lion, the tiger the parents
Yep.
should be joining the dens. Yeah.
well, if it's a den meeting, yeah. I mean, I was thinking like in a pack meeting situation where some packs the parents sit separately. But yeah. And so hopefully they have a fun time. Talk to them at the end of the meeting, answer their questions. Let them know that if their kid gets fidgety and they need to leave 3/4 of the way through the meeting, that's okay. A lot of kids are kind of like that until they get a little older. And then here's the thing, they might walk away. It's up to you to reach back out to them once a week and be like, hey, is there any information you need? Is there anything I can answer? And you don't need to be pushy about it. Just keep going until either they join or they say, no, we've decided we're doing curling this year and we're just not doing this. And then you thank them for their time. Sometimes they'll say, this isn't a good time, maybe at the beginning of the school year. And then you say, that's great. We will reach out to you in August. You write that down so that you actually do. An annoying amount of time, they agree with you to come to a meeting and then they don't show. That's probably someone who's not going to join, but there's still a decent chance. It's worth inviting them a second time. It doesn't take very long. Maybe, little sister got sick and life just didn't work. So keep inviting them for a while. And then when they are ready, do the paperwork, introduce them to people, all these things. Next slide. So now they paid the cash, but that doesn't mean that they're scouts and scouters yet. All right. And I have seen people feel unsupported and just sort of walk away. Okay. Scouting can be intimidating, especially oddly enough, the more sort of impressive your pack is, the more intimidating it can be unless your new member coordinator is really on the ball. Because everyone will seem to know what they're talking about, what's going on, what the event is, who to talk to about what. So they need special attention, knowing what uniform parts to buy, how to put patches on, if that makes sense, how your unit communicates, getting plugged in, who's who, introduce them in person to their den leader, introduce them to the treasurer so that it's not scary to know who to talk to about paying for things. Make sure you provide anything that you expect to provide to them. Different units have different things in terms of number of patches and neckerchief, t-shirts or whatever. We're talking a lot here, though, today about not recruiting in September and August. And so one of the important things for that is to establish realistic goals for the families who don't know and don't care. All right. They don't know about earning rank yet. So they're not hung up on whether or not their kid earns rank. But this I found is really important to make sure you have this conversation with the den leaders. Especially, for example, if someone joins in March, a den leader can get quite nervous. How am I going to get this person to rank? I've already had someone join in January. I'm done doing makeup meetings and they start ripping their hair out. And you're like, no, that's not the point. They're joining in March. They're doing Bobcat, maybe if you can get it in. They're having fun. They're doing adventures. Try to get them to summer camp. That's golden. They start in September with everybody else. Absolute win. No, it doesn't need to be stressful. Den leaders often need help feeling comfortable with this though, because they have been goal focused, especially if they're having trouble getting all the requirements done. They're getting a little anxious about it. Make sure they're invited to anything that's already gone. So like, make sure they know of everything that's coming up. If they join before Pinewood Derby, but after you handed out the car kits, get them a car kit. All right. Help them out, let them know there's still one more build night, or, that don't worry about making your car super awesome this year, put some wheels in and use some markers and you got a car, like don't stress about it your first year. I mean, you shouldn't stress about it anytime, but particularly don't stress about it if you just joined. It's really important to have family orientation sessions. But when people are joining all year, that's hard. So if you do one, I recommend recording it so that or just doing a second one on the computer so you can play it, just send people YouTube links to it. This should be something that explains to people how money works. Like, how does fundraising work in your unit? Do they have to sell a certain amount, or does it go into a scout account? All that kind of information. Does the whole pack go to summer camp together, or does each den go to a different place? These are all important kinds of consideration. Next slide. Obviously, something I mentioned multiple times, really recommend you have a new member coordinator, because if you're here and you're a committee chair or a Cub master, you got enough going on. Your evenings are full. You don't have time to do this. Now, you might still do it because you really want your pack to succeed. I've been there. I did this. I was committee chair and new member coordinator. I think that's pretty common. But it means that you're stressed and that you don't call people back because you ran out of time and so forth. So keep an eye out for someone who knows it, who's been around long enough to understand the program and is a good talker and is good at remembering things that, is the type of person that can have a system of, I need to call them back next Thursday, and that they'll remember to do it. Some people just can't keep track of their chickens and will never be able to do it, no matter how good they are, if you went and grabbed them and stuck them in front of a family member. Use them for that, if that's the case, but they're not going to be able to reliably look at their leads on My.Scouting all the time and call people back. And everyone will just be stressed out. Another trick is I recommend having a email and a phone number that is the PAX and not the new member coordinator. That way you can pass this role and you don't have to reprint all your flyers. They still have the same email address. They still have the same phone number. I don't shill for Google, but Google Voice is free. You can get a phone number that you can pass off between different people. It goes to an app in your phone. And you can do it from the web. So what I do for this is I have a document where I have little text blurbs that I copy and paste into Google Voice to message people. So like if I come back from a tabling event with 6 6 email addresses and leads of some likely candidates, families. I send them a form letter by email, but I know they don't read that. So I have another blurb that says it was so nice to meet you today. I've sent you an email, some information. I'd love to have a phone call to talk to you about your child XXX, and I copy paste it, replace the X's with the child's name, hit enter, boom, I can text a whole bunch of people really fast. Which is what makes it possible to do these other things. And then, as I said, you can just hand the password off to the next person as time goes on. That lets you then save your flyers. You can even like put the number on, like get the number nicely done on the banner or, other things like that and not worry about it. And I believe that's that. So I would go to questions for either of us.
We'll say having an official email makes you look so much better. I think it kind of maybe puts parents nerves at ease if it's like an official email and not some random person they've never met before.
Well, I mean, thinking for myself, we have one, the trick is remembering to check.
So the strategy for that is, if some, is on one hand to share amongst the committee, but here's the deal, if something I say a lot at work is if something is everyone's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility. It has to be somebody, some individual human's job. And then I recommend, even if you don't want it to show up in your normal email app, install a, like if you have an iPhone and you have your own personal Gmail or whatever attached to the mail and you don't want to blend the two things there, install the Gmail app or the Yahoo app or whatever you do for your email. Have it give you notifications just like you get from your normal mail app so you actually see it.
You can also set up that account to auto forward to a few people in your unit.
Yep, you totally can. It does get to if it's everyone's responsibility,
Yeah.
it's no one's
But at least,
responsibility.
according to the
Well, and then
member.
you're back into that thing where you gotta manage that, when people come and go, and you gotta remember who all you forwarded it to.
Yeah.
You know,
I have both our pack email and my personal email configured on here, so I can just switch between the two of them. Same thing with the Google Voice. Biggest thing with Google Voice is that if you don't touch it for 30 days, you'll lose your number, so you kind of regularly look at it. You can recover it. It's
yeah.
within a certain time period. But
It's longer than 30 days.
is it?
Yeah, I think it's
'Cause I get that
nine.
you haven't touched it in 30 days.
Yeah, no, I've had a Google Voice number for years.
Okay.
Maybe it's new.
It might just be, yeah, we've got, anyway, but it is.
Could you go
it's
back
really
to
handy
my
because
contact information?
I just love it because I can make a phone call from my computer headset, which is way more comfortable to be like, hi, yeah.
Do we have any questions on the
calls that
phone?
Nobody online yet.
Nobody on the.
Yeah.
calls that number.
It's my
To
phone.
you directly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can set it up, a forwarding rule for the Google Voice number. Well, actually, my Google Voice number is a cell number that I had about 20 years ago, right? That's what everybody in my family used, and so I forwarded that number over to Google Voice, and I've had it for eons. And then you just forward it to whatever cell phone number or phone you have for, forevermore, right? So that way, if you change your cellular carrier, get a different number, change jobs, and they can do it well, something like that, right? And you still have that consistent Google Voice number, which is what I think you're saying for the pack as well, right? So if you have that consistent
Pass the
Google Voice
account
number.
Yeah, you don't even have to forward it to a number. You can install the Google Voice app and it just rings as an alternative phone app. And it makes it very clear that this is the Scout thing. And so I won't answer at certain times of the day or, I'll know if I'm in the middle of a work meeting, I can just let that go.
If I recall correctly, I believe Google Voice is through Wi-Fi only. It doesn't use cellular.
Yeah.
It does indeed use cellular.
Oh, it does? Okay.
It's perfectly way. There is a switch where you can turn it off if you're worried about your data plan.
Okay. But I've definitely, whenever I went to like Camp Merriweather and I had no signal, Google Voice was the only one that worked because I was able to access the Wi-Fi.
It also works over
It also
Wi-Fi.
works.
That's what I'm saying is it works over Wi-Fi.
I was gonna say on that, Mark, if you're looking to maintain like pack separate stuff, the advantage of having a Google account is that you also have a Google Drive account, And then you can start assembling all of your shared stuff and sharing it out to the people in your pack without necessarily giving over admin access to it.
Our pack has one of the Google not-for-profit app accounts.
Oh,
And so
okay.
we've made, we've got our domain name mounted with it. And then we've created Cubmaster and cord new member and all that sort of stuff. And
Yeah, there's also, they'll give you access to Google Sites, you could go to
Yep.
their website for your.
So I guess I'll ask, of the units here, who's worried about membership numbers, right?
We're top heavy, really top heavy.
Yeah.
I'm out next year when I cross over. By, well,
We,
yes, we have like 80% of our leadership in San Bill. So we need to bring in those tigers.
yes, we just crossed over 11 AOLs, including my son, so I'm out next year at 4. Yeah.
Have you found succession?
We do, we have it, but it's, it's tight. Right, like we have a plan to get there, but I would like to build some more backup for this.
This is continually a problem in packs in a way that it's usually more so than for troops. Because troops occasionally get the occasional adult who just never leaves, even when the kid age is out. And that almost never happens at pack level, because those people were eager and went on with their kids. And then, so it does make things, succession is a very tricky subject for packs. And then you have fresh families who don't know anything about it and have to come up to speed on everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful for guys like Alan, who's the new den leader this year, right? Who's got involved and engaged in the thing, but, you know, we can't dump it, we're not dumping everything on Alan, right? Like, you know what I mean?
at least not yet.
That's not fair or appropriate. So, the issue I have is, you know, I've got a couple families, we've got a couple new lions this year I've been working with. I'm just trying to get one of them to step up to take on the lion den, right? Like people seem scared of committing to it, right? Even, you know, as much as you try to tell them, you know, it's not that hard, you can do it, right? Like, yeah, don't overthink it, just go look at the thing, come up with a plan. As long as kids are having fun, it's all good, right? And you'll cover the program, right? So, I mean, that's the challenge I'm most concerned about right now is getting the parents that are there. We have enough scouts, right? And if we get the parents that are there to invite friends, invite people, I think the recruiting will take care of itself as long as the kids are there and having fun and covering the program. That's the way it worked for our AOL that it crossed over. We started with, you know, 3 tigers. And we grew from there and we just, again, crossed over 11. We picked up and dropped a dozen kids along, you know, 10 kids along the way that are still friends, and, you know, we have the community that we wanted, right? How are you doing?
It's been a struggle. We had a Cub Master leave very suddenly, and that caused our Wolfden to collapse, but he was leader for that as well. And then we had our Tiger Den leave. So we're very
Goal, you have a 2-year gap in the program. And the thing that I always found hard is, for most of the time I was committee chair, we were missing a rank. There was a rank we had no kid, and it made it so hard to recruit anyone of that age. Because no family wants to be the first family and then be asked to essentially be a den leader and to help recruit and to fill in, you know, and it took like two or 3 years to get enough critical mass at the same moment. Be like, that's it. We have 3, and one of them is, you know, a family that already knows about scouting and willing to make this work. And then all of a sudden, that age ballooned, and I forget where they're at, but it's
Which, right, we had 12 tigers, which was.
Wow.
They went on to be like 10 wolves, but yeah, it was a rough year.
so
Run the
yeah,
opposite direction.
it's a problem.
I have 1 weebo, I have 1 tiger, I have no wolves. But I have 3 bears that are active, and I have 4 really active lions. with three of those families are have
That's-
older siblings and scouts, so I know how it is.
Yeah, no, 4 Lions, that's a great place to be, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. 4
So I
Lions,
know we can grow.
cheers, yeah.
One of them's mine, so I'm like,
It is tough though, and I do want to just acknowledge that, as I say, I think even in the good old days, I think packs always felt under stress and that they were about to fall apart. It's sort of like balancing, plates on, walking on a tightrope. It always feels like the pack is in trouble.
On a recruiting point, though, this is something that I talk about with all the new families, is when it's like, this is a family thing. If you've got, a mom or a dad who are, looking to get more involved with their community, like it's a fantastic opportunity for volunteerism. And that's part of my kind of recruiting pitch is like, not only can your kid get engagement, but you can meet, a group of adults who are also committed to helping out. So,
It's, that's a tricky line.
It is a
I
tricky
struggle
line
with
to walk,
walking, right?
right.
Like on the one hand, I mean, I'll share my story, right? I'll tell it from the mountaintops, what a wonderful experience it's been for me and my son and us as a family, right? This is our first time scouting since the Tiger year, again, just crossed over to 855, right? So, but the thing is there's that balancing act, because I tell people all the time that if you want to get the thing out of scouting that it's for, right? Just building that community and teaching that thing, then you as a parent, especially with these younger kids, these tigers and lions, the way to do it is you gotta come to the meetings. You gotta come to the meetings, you gotta get involved, and you don't have to, let the whole thing up on your shoulders or anything. It's not that hard, but you gotta come show up and be involved, right? And I think that commitment scares a lot of people. Scared me. I'm
Yeah.
nervous about it, but I do it.
It is scary. On the other hand, do think of, I do want to put a little bit of hope there in that, as my daughter gets older, I see how more and more she has so many interests besides scouting, how the other organizations work, and they're so heavy-handed actually compared to us. They're like, that's great that you want to do this sport. Here is the 30 hours a year volunteer service you're gonna do. Pick the days you're doing it now. And here's the $500 bill. I sometimes wonder if we're a little too cautious with it, and if we were just a little more this is what it takes to get the thing. It's like, I haven't found a good answer to it.
That's the other kind of scarier one too, is I know how I was recruited. It was like, we don't have a Tiger Den leader. If you want to have a Tiger Den, somebody's gonna have to step up. How about you? Here's the book, right? Like, in some ways that works, right? Because now you're in there and you're doing it and you find out, oh, this isn't so bad, right? This is actually really fun.
I had to do we don't currently have a Cub Master. We don't currently have this, that, and the other. And after months of doing that as a parent meeting, I had to have the announcement that, I'm drafting up the papers to close the unit.
Right.
We have until such and such a date for people to step up.
Right.
How did that work out, Jeff?
really well.
Oh, were you 195 before?
Yeah.
I inherited the committee chair role, Josh.
Yeah. I can talk about this all night. I did promise though that we'd also make a little bit of space for if anyone just has any other problems. Okay, then I will just say, Alan, since it sounds like you've been recently strong-armed into this role. If things get stressful and they've moved on, if things get stressful, think of roundtable or reaching out to other leaders. We have a Cub Scout, we have some mailing lists, including one for Cub Scout leaders. And at roundtable, you can get to know people here. There's my email address. Feel free to just be like, this is hard. And depending what the issue is, just I guess what I'm saying is there may be evenings where it feels like this is a lot. Right. And the way to deal with that is to talk to people.
Make sure you go through the online training too, the my.scouting training for your position. There's a lot of good pointers in there.
No, I mean, sorry, Alan. Alan's been a rock star, right? Like he joined
Yeah.
our community with September. Yeah, in September and stepped right up. It's been a rock star in here, which is why I want to make sure to vote for this.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
The other
You know,
thing,
he should, you know, I want to recruit, so he's not the only one like Paul back, right?
That's just it. I think in a year under PC's leadership would have been ideal, you know, the. Seeing that, you know, it was a quick moment with him, it's seeing the like group go, most of our leadership. The parents are most involved, it's a premier product, and it's new.
the good
With
news
that,
is,
it's good.
the good news
For
is
sure, for
Cub Scouting is a program. It's not exactly a plug and play book, although they're rewriting the handbooks to try to be more like that, at least at the den level. The pack level, it's a little more, what do you guys like to do? You know, it's a tradition here. We do this in this month and this, you have to go camping in this style or whatever. It's really good to have those traditions, so mostly so you don't have to make it up every year. It's easy to do the same thing year after year. On the other hand, if it has to be different, because like you're half the size of what it was before, it would be ridiculous to have all of this orchestra, just do it differently. The kids, the lovely thing is the kids have no idea. They don't know, as long as they're having fun and learning stuff, they don't care.
The thing is, a good job grabbing them, enjoy yourself, have fun. I don't think that, you know, they're here just to where the time's out.
Yeah, right. And then if you're loosely framing it around the program will take care of itself, the kids will have fun, and then the units will grow, right? But we also, we need parents to help, right? We need parents to drive it.
And I will say that our motto is do your best, and sometimes your best might be cool. My announcements for this month's PAC meeting are like 7 bullet points that I printed out and cut out. That's it, I'm done. It's okay. I found that being transparent with people is like, hey,
Yeah, Justin, can you pull
We're running
this
this
part
right
right
now.
now for me?
Right.
I forgot to add, I still somewhat of a work in progress. I'm continually adding to it, but on our district website, I have made a recruiting like quick reference guide, and I've collected just advice from people have asked like, hey, you had a good recruiting year, what did you do? Just a little bit. Oh, right here, recruiting quick start guide. And you can take this, make a copy of it, do what you need to do, but throughout this document, if you just want to scroll down randomly, just to get an idea of what's on it. I have different things on just I pulled up like the different farmers markets in the areas, different event pages, how you can get some recruiting out of community service, dynamic scouting, how to have a join night, how to have an open house. It's just a collection of different advice. If you ever want to reference it, it's on our district page. And if you ever have any notes, questions, comments, concerns about it, please send it my way. I will adjust accordingly, just how it's needed.
I had a question, and I don't know if anybody has any input about it, right? So, I mean, we're literally, you know, a block down the street, right? So, Lennox is our natural recruiter, right? Has anybody had any experience, like, what has anybody else done to get into the schools? Right,
So-
where we could like do flag ceremonies or sit down or, you know, do something to create that awareness where the kids say, oh, we saw the Cub Scouts come in and they were all wearing the blue uniforms and they look like, you know, so.
One-on-one contact with the principal, just.
Yeah.
Our pact does monthly flag ceremonies for their monthly assembly.
Oh,
And it's because we talked to the principal a bunch and hammered out some ideas, and she's given us access to all the other events that the school does. We can have booths at all the different events and, you know, their fun run and whatever. And so she's really open to it, but it didn't happen until we went up and started a conversation with her.
I would add a couple layers to that. So obviously, a good relationship with the principal, if there's one natural school, is a very key part. There's also, most schools have a parent-teacher organization of some such, and it's usually that organization that runs most of the things that you'd want to be part of, like back to school and carnivals and so they usually will want the principal's blessing for another group to be there. I know that like the Pack 195, we did that a couple of times and now they don't feel a need to check in with principal anymore. It's just fine. But obviously the principal has say over during the school day with those. Hillsborough is actually you're actually lucky to be in Hillsborough as opposed to like Beaverton. We have a better relationship with the school district so far. You can even get space here, you can rent it for free like we are tonight. All these kinds of things. You can talk to me if you want to learn about that. Sometimes it's just really nice to be able to have your den meetings in a cafeteria where the kids can run a whole bunch instead of trying to fit it into someone's living room. Depends on your charter org. If you're at a church that has a nice big social hall, then you're already all set. But
No, we're blessed with a great charter.
but that's something to know. And then if you view yourself as primarily at one school, try to do a thing or two a year. Maybe you can help with cleaning up before, the week before school starts, try and pick up some trash around. It almost doesn't matter if you're terribly successful. It's the fact that you brought, 15 kids over 2 days before school and picked up trash and took a picture picking up trash. Now people feel good about that. The PTA feels good about it. The principal does. You make inroads with the custodian because you actually have to have good connections. The custodian actually is more important in many ways than the principal, because if you get a bad review from the custodian, you're gone.
Yeah.
Also, if you happen to be renting library space, you can consider.
Yeah, but so it's a relationship you have to build. I think you'd be surprised though how quick that relationship can build to be just fine. Just keep in mind the principal is extremely overloaded. If you think the teachers are stressed, the principal is just a little firm little white dwarf star of stress and pressure. So you want to make their life really easy. You want to know what the event is and have a very specific ask. Like if you want, you have kids come to Lennox, that they have Spirit Week once a month, you talk to your kid, find out what they do. And then you can have a very specific ask and have that connection come through from leaders that are actually at the school. Their parents who are already there, especially there's probably in your pack one of those parents that volunteers a lot and the office staff know by face, and leverage that person. Because the school knows that. And if they come in and be like, hey, I vouch for these people, it'll be good.
Our chartered org rep went to every PTO meeting and actually volunteered to be on the PTO board too. So that was really good inroads for us.
That's big.
Yeah, we could actually get posts on the PTO's Facebook page about check out the troop or the pack that we chartered.
And in Hillsborough, if you want to, the schools are allowed to distribute flyers. It is a bit hit or miss how effective that is. You need to talk to the office staff. Usually what it amounts to is creating them, pre-slicing them in the right size. You can ask them for a list of like per teacher, how many flyers, and you can subdivide them. If you are a parent and you have the volunteer background check off and you volunteer to go in and help them distribute these things, I did that many years ago. They don't have the staff time to deal with that. They're dealing with sick kids. They just run out of time. And eventually, instead of getting these out to the teachers to distribute, they just go in recycling because they just were stressed trying to get through the things they have to do. So if anyone in your pack volunteers sometimes in the school, you know, they could sort of, and you want to hand out flyers, they could sort of volunteer to help the office put them in teachers' mailboxes. You make a pain point go away, of course, they'll let you put your own flyers.
Is Kendra Robinson on the call? I wonder if she's hearing this. She's
Um,
another one of our superstars. But I'm thinking, I'm wondering if we should distribute something
No,
in spring instead of waiting until fall.
Yeah.
Because I get people engaged
Each jar.
over the summer, right?
What did we do with each jar? Have you seen
Splash
any
pad events,
success
something
with
like
the
that
flyers
in the
out on
summer.
each jar?
Yeah.
I don't have any personal experience. Every unit I know that has tried electronic flyers has found, well, let's just say, it's a good thing, it's extremely easy to do. Because they found very little success. But on the other hand, it's so easy to do and cheap. Because you want a flyer all 7 grades at an elementary school, you know, you need 500 flyers. It's not expensive, there's ways of doing it, you can get some help, but it's a non-trivial thing, you need to have a plan before you do that, you don't just willy-nilly do it every month.
What does Peach Jar look like from the parent perspective? Are they also getting like important school news, or is that purely only for flyers?
It's just flyers.
Very interested on like what percentage of parents actually have that downloaded.
So, yeah, I mean,
It goes to many.
I think it's basically the families that have just moved to town and are desperate for things that look at it.
yeah. And it's a funnel thing, right? Like you were talking about it, just the awareness, like if I can get a flyer in front of every kid's take home
Have to be out.
homework folder. Well, oh, Cub Scouts, like people are still doing, that's still a thing, you know?
Yeah, and just a point, if you do public awareness things, I mean, not public awareness, if you do tabling events, even people that don't sign on the